My name is Sapna Jain. I am the daughter of Dr. Sunitha and Manoj Jain. So Akhil proposed in May of 2019. For pretty much all of 2019, we were wedding planning. We were in India actually in December and January, getting everything ready. We came back, I think it was about mid-January. We came back from India and pretty much ready to go. We were just kind of starting to hear about, this infection that was happening abroad. Hadn't really hit the US yet. So when we came back, we were still full scale, ready to go. Then about February, we started hearing more about the infection.
Growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus.
Deadly Chinese coronavirus.
The first death from coronavirus here in the United States.
COVID was starting to spread. We were starting to see illness happening. We were seeing lockdowns in other parts of the world. And March is when it really kind of hit here.
Sapna had just moved to Boston after however many years of long distance relationship. So having that conversation face to face and having that not over FaceTime or phone calls or whatever was much easier. But the decision itself was still difficult. My mom was kind of refused to believe, I guess, that we actually needed to postpone it. Similar to how I was in January, right? Like, this isn't going to come to the US. Yeah, that was, I think, one of the hardest parts, trying to convince my parents that maybe postponing is the right idea. We've talked to everyone already. The decision was hard, at least the first time was hard. But I think with time, it became easier. Mid-March is when we were having the discussions. And Sapna and I wanted to make a decision by the end of March, if not earlier. I think we did it before April, but honestly can't remember right now. All that time is just a blur now.
I think I dragged the whole family into all of this. I write about COVID, I talk a lot about it, and been doing conferences. We did a Hopkins conference on how to hold a large event. We never anticipated that anything like this would ever come around within our lifetimes. I think it was natural to take this idea and to put it into real life so that people could see the wedding and then also see all of the things that were behind the wedding. This is the conversation of what happened behind the wedding.
After we had twice canceled the wedding, I did not want a large wedding celebration to happen. Too much was at risk. My reputation was at risk.
This is the Omicron wave, and the wedding was smack in the middle of when the peak was. And you can see the increased number of cases that were compared to Delta in the Omicron, just like threefold increase. Wedding was on January 29th, and this peaked around January 4th and 5th.
But my daughter insisted. She said, "Dad, if we don't do the wedding celebration now, I never want to do it."
And I said, okay, we will do this wedding, but we will do it in the safest way possible. We will follow the science to the greatest extent possible to do a safe wedding. No one had done this before at that time. I had a chance to speak to numerous national, international experts.
It won't be as bad as this
It's stressful?
most stressful for sure, but also everyone knows Dr. Fauci, and we were all following Dr. Fauci as we should. But I really think that Dr. Jain was the Dr. Fauci of Memphis. I didn't have an opportunity to ask Dr. Fauci questions, but I sure asked Dr. Jain a whole lot of questions, and he was that authoritative. I followed a lot of people nationally. And we have a lot of good doctors locally here, and I asked questions of them, but mostly I relied on Dr. Jain. And I thought a lot of Dr. Fauci, and I think a lot of Dr. Jain, so that's why I really thought he helped lead us through this pandemic. We could not have done it without Dr. Jain.
this was possible with the 4 key strategies we put in place. First, we made sure that there was communication, that the guests would know what our plan and strategy was. Second was vaccination. Everyone had to be vaccinated. And yes, some people decided that they did not want to be vaccinated, and my daughter called them up and said, no, we can't have you come to the wedding. Third was to have people masked until we got the test results back. And then the last and most extensive was testing. What we did was we had individuals, before they took a flight, to do a rapid test. When they arrived, then they did a rapid test again and a PCR test. And all of them were negative, then they would come in.
We had to have PCR testing. Rapid tests didn't cut it, because in Indian weddings you have these events which are more than one day. It's a sort of 4-day span. And so we knew with rapid tests, if they did have COVID, then it took at least 2 days for them to sort of show up on the rapid. So we knew that it was going to have to be PCR testing, and we knew it was going to have to be sort of on site when people arrived.
The wedding had a potential of being the greatest wedding, or the potential of being an absolute disaster.
It was challenging to decide when to actually have the wedding, if to have the wedding at all, honestly. I think there was a lot of conversations about who was going to be able to come, who was able to celebrate with us, in person at least. I think we had a lot of conversations about safety and exactly what was important to us, and what we were willing to forego in the celebration if we had to do that.
So we knew, whenever the event was going to happen, we kind of had to do everything that we could to protect our friends and family and all the guests that were going to be there. So we almost kind of, there was the whole wedding planning track, which in itself it's challenging. We had to then build in a whole COVID track, and Manoj got that responsibility. So we really had to kind of look at everything that we could do to ensure that people were not going to get sick or, infect each other or get you guys sick. So it became almost as extensive for the COVID planning as it was for the rest of the wedding planning.
The day before the wedding, our daughter gave us a scare. She pulled me over in the bridal suite and said, "Dad, I have a sore throat." At that time, I knew that something could be really bad. So I told her, "We'll have to test you for COVID." I could feel the burden of my medical knowledge as well as the love I had for the family. In the afternoon, I came to her during the henna ceremony, her hands all decorated, and I looked up to her and I could see there was a smile on her face, and she put a thumbs up. Everything would be okay.
Of 400 individuals tested, 10 were positive. And if we had not done this level of testing, they would have most certainly caused a super spreader event, and many people would have been infected.
So I've heard that, because the whole feat of planning this wedding from May of 2020 on, where it just involved so much shifting and planning and this and that, I think it really was like a whole family effort. And so I think capturing that in something like this is a pretty unique way of doing it.
I think the importance of all of this is to show that you can do an event, and a larger scale event at that, and make people as comfortable as possible. You know, with for the wedding, all of the testing that we did, as uncomfortable as sticking swabs up your nose multiple times in the span of, 2, 3, 4 days, it was all done to make sure that we could gather and be together as safely as possible.
Planning takes time, and we apparently got 2 bonus years of time.
We don't necessarily ask for a ton of extra time, but we sort of made it work.
It was an incredibly positive, eventful event. The fear was that it was going to turn into a disaster. That's the only outcome I saw as something that would attract attention. But what I realized afterwards, and we collectively realized, is that the positive outcome was something to talk about, something to celebrate. The resilience, the celebration you can do in a pandemic, even in the most difficult of situations. I think that's the learning lesson from all of this.
I'm grateful that everything worked out the way it did. There's definitely a chance that it didn't, and we were fortunate that it worked out.
It all turned out well in the end, but it required a lot of logistical planning, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But it was important, I think, for both families to be able to have an event, to be able to celebrate after so much time of not being able to be together.
To Sapna and Akhil, their resilience after 2.5 years, multiple attempts, there is nothing that speaks of their love and endurance and courage and their persistence for making tonight happen. Sapna and Akhil. Let me begin with a word of advice. In life, we make many decisions. Sapna, when you were growing up and in high school, the first major decision you had to make was college. And you went to the same college as your mom, Wellesley. Good choice. The second major C is career. You became a lawyer. The third is a city. You chose a city. You chose Boston, my hometown. I love it. And then the fourth C in life that you make a major decision on is your companion. Akhil, the best choice ever.
Today, we are so happy to welcome Sapna into our family, and I know you two will share a happy life together.
Marriages are sometimes framed as the end of a journey and the beginning of a new one. But I like to think after all this time, 11 years, that today is just an affirmation of something that you and I had known all those many years ago when I had forgotten to text you back. And I guess, after all these years, the chagrin of our parents and how long we've waited, that we actually go through with emotions. And I don't think I would have wanted to do this with anyone else.
Are you happy that you're married?
Took long enough.
Yeah. Did take a long time.